welcome back to the Kiwi Wedding Podcast. My name is Lydia. I am your host and a wedding photographer at Lydia Rachel Photography. Still got a bit of that gravel in my voice, recovering from laryngitis where I fully lost my voice and just a bit of a lingering cough, but so glad to nearly be on the other side of that. So excuse me sounding a bit different in this intro. It's October. We just had daylight savings. This year is absolutely flying by. Makes me so happy, the lighter evenings and more sunny days. I am a summer girl, so always counting down till summer, which is also wedding season in New Zealand. Very exciting. And a few very exciting things coming up with the podcast. You may have seen, if you follow the podcast on Instagram, that I'm holding an in-person event in Auckland on Sunday the 3rd of November 2024, if you're listening to this from the future. We have built this amazing online community with the podcast, and I really just wanted to bring that in person. It's going to be a great chance to meet other couples and brides-to-be going through the same season together. Get lots of tips and inspiration for planning your own wedding, and a few more exciting treats and surprises to come. Tickets are going to go on sale this week, and I know we're really rolling into that busy time of year for everyone, so I hope you can make it. Make sure you grab one. There is only a limited amount, and I look forward to seeing you there. On today's episode, I'm chatting to the lovely Amy. We talk through her beautiful love story and planning her wedding. This is actually not a New Zealand wedding, though it is Kiwis getting married, so still counts as a Kiwi wedding, but they got married in Bali. And this is a really interesting one for those of you that have ever considered doing a destination wedding, maybe to the islands or Indonesia. And I think you will learn a lot about how this can seem like a really extravagant thing, but actually be a cheaper option. We chat through the whole experience of planning a wedding from overseas and what was key in making that so easy. We chat through what it was like to navigate immense grief in their family alongside celebration, having some local New Zealand vendors fly over to Bali for their wedding and why that was a great choice. An extremely hot wedding day, lots of sweat, pool dips and some funny moments. Honeymooning with all your friends and family, focusing on what's important and what actually matters when planning a wedding. Amy has so much amazing wisdom and advice. I know you're going to love this one. I love Amy's style. She owns a beautiful homeware and gift store with one in Christchurch and one in Kaikoura, and actually contributed a voucher to our recent birthday giveaway, which was very cool. And you can see the creativity and style she put into her own wedding as well. Make sure you jump over to Instagram at the Kiwi Wedding Podcast to check out some photos. It was photographed by the talented Susanna Blatchford, and they're just stunning. Enjoy episode 65 with Amy.
Hi, Amy. Thank you so much for joining me on the podcast today. So excited to hear a bit more of your story.
Thank you so much for having me. It's so exciting. I love listening to your podcast, and I think it's super helpful for people who have never planned a wedding before or even an event, just to hear from other people and their experiences.
So to start off with, if you could just tell me a bit about you and your partner, how you guys met, and your life together.
Well, I actually was living in Sydney for 5 or so years, and I had a horrific dating life. It was actually quite entertaining. All of my friends like to recount when I got catfished by a woman on Tinder, so that was a fun time for me. Turning up to a date, and it meant to be a 31-year-old male architect, and it definitely wasn't. Which is quite funny leading into meeting my husband, Dan. I got set up on a blind date by a girl that I work with at the hospital. Her partner works for my now husband, and she was like, I really want to see you out with Ryan's boss. And I was like, oh, she's like, he's an architect. I was like, there's a bit of a red flag with architects. Anyway, we went on a blind date for a coffee after about 5 months of both putting it off for a very long time because we're both a bit busy. Went for a coffee on a Sunday afternoon that lasted for about 5 hours. And then that's kind of where it just, the rest is history. And yeah, we were sort of dating for about 2 and a bit years before we got engaged. We had quite an interesting engagement period because we went on a holiday to Noosa over in Queensland with Dan's parents the November before we got engaged. And I didn't know that Dan had gone to sort of start sourcing a ring at this point. He must have just left me at the beach at one point, toddled off to sort of go look at some rings. And we were there with his parents, came home, and that was in November. And then in the February, Dan's mother actually got suddenly quite unwell and was in hospital, and she actually passed away in the February. So we lost his mum in the February, and then he proposed in the March. So I wasn't expecting a proposal that soon after losing his mum. And the whole thing kind of fell into place because he really wanted his mum to be able to hold the ring that he had ordered while they were on holiday, which is actually really sad. And she never got to. And then we kind of sort of got engaged, and then we were like, well, now we've got to have a wedding without one really special person who everyone wants at their wedding as their mum. So that was really difficult, kind of like tramping through that period of like organizing a wedding and having an engagement party and being like, oh, it's really hard to celebrate when there's this like feeling of grief on top of the whole thing as well. So that made it quite hard and actually led hugely into how we decided to have the wedding overseas, was purely to just like completely distract it from being in New Zealand. So it was not like mum was missing from our New Zealand thing. It was like, well, it's a holiday, it's overseas, a lot of people won't be there. And that's kind of how it sort of fell into place, because it was really, really crappy timing and an awful, awful period of our lives, really. But yeah, I think it happens to a lot of people. They lose a loved one between this like super exciting part of being engaged to being married. And I think it's, I don't know, we just ever since then have sort of lived on this like, if you want to do something, you do it, because you just don't know what's going to happen. So that's my one thing about planning a wedding, is just do it.
Love that. Oh, that's so rough. I'm sorry that you went through that. And yeah, it's such a hard like juxtaposition to navigate this super exciting, amazing time of your life. But yeah, like you say, alongside such grief. So yeah, that's super tough. And you touched on it a little bit, but yeah, can you tell us a bit more about your proposal story?
Yeah, so I'm hard to surprise, I think. Like, I feel like I'm always on to what's happening. So I genuinely had no idea it was going on. And actually, when he had finally proposed, everyone was like, did you not even notice there was a ring sitting next to Rosanna's ashes at Jeff's house for like the last month? And I was like, didn't even see it. I don't know how I missed that. But anyway, we had a weekend in Kaikoura that was kind of like on the cards, but not on the cards, because we obviously live between the both towns and going back and forth quite a lot. Every now and then we just decide we need a weekend in Christchurch to sort our lives out and do our washing and all the mundane things. And really good friend of mine had flown in from Australia, and she was expecting and telling me that she was having a baby, which was such an exciting weekend. And they were going up to Kaikoura. And I think this was the whole plan, was that to get them to come out for dinner with us the night before to convince me to go to Kaikoura, because I was like, I'm not interested. We've got so much to do here. So Dan convinced my good friend Grace to convince me to go to Kaikoura for the weekend. And I remember now looking back, it's quite funny, isn't it? The morning of packing the car, we had so much stuff going up. And I was like, just put your golf bag in with Grace and Dean. And he's like, no, the golf bag's coming with me. Like, just put the golf bag with them. Anyway, now I realize that the box was in the golf bag and he needed it with him, but quite funny. Anyway, going up to Kaikoura, getting up there, and sat down. My parents are on a dairy farm up there, on the base of sort of like a hill. And we sat down and Dad wasn't there. Mum was sort of chatting away, and my mum's not very good at keeping a secret, nor can she ever lie. So I don't know how she did this either, but we sat down and then Dad called Mum and said, basically, we've had a leak in a spring up at the top of the farm. the boys are off this weekend. I'm going to need some tools. The water's going everywhere. And mum sort of played along, was like, well, there's no one here. There's Amy and Dan, but they've just arrived. And then I, being me, was like, we can help. Don't stress. What does he need? But he was really specific about the tools, like a yellow something rather. Anyway, went out to the shed, got the tools he was needing, jumped on the motorbike, and I started driving, which is hilarious because I felt like I knew where I was going. But when we got there, I had no idea. So I went up to where I thought we were, and Dan's like, nah, I can see there's truck tracks going up there. And I was like, that's not where the spring is. Like, it just seems bizarre. And it wasn't until we got right up, parked the quad, got off, and started walking, and I saw like a picnic that I was like, oh, I see. So mum and dad had the morning of made a wee picnic up, and it was in a wee river behind my parents' house, which is really nice because it's a family fun that's been in the family for a long time. And Dan wanted it to be a place that we could go back to with family. He's very big on family and legacy and memories like that. So he was like, this is somewhere we can come back one day, hopefully with children, and play in the river and reminisce on this real special moment. We got back on the quad after our picnic and had some champagne, got back to the house, and he had organised his whole family to arrive in Kaikoura. So when we were driving up, they were right behind us, and I had no idea, which is even funny because I often go and find my friends to stalk where all our family is for the weekend, but for whatever reason I hadn't. So we had this big feast of, we have Sri Lankan as Dan's sort of heritage. So we had a big Sri Lankan feast for dinner, and both of our families hung out for the whole day and stayed for the weekend. And it was just really special, kind of like bringing a bit of Rosanna, Dan's mum, into that sort of moment of having that meal together and bringing that in was really special. So yeah, it was complete surprise. Had no idea it was happening. Best day ever.
So good. Got the surprise factor, and yeah, so special to have all your family there to celebrate after. Love that story and special place as well. I love that, being able to return back to and those memories. So, had you always dreamed about what your wedding would look like? Did you have a specific vision, vibe in mind? What were those kind of first steps? Finding a venue, even deciding location, country, all of that.
You know what? It's really funny. Like, I'm a real girly girl and I love fashion. I'm a bit of a magpie. I feel like I've always planned everything in my life, but I'd never, ever thought about a wedding. And I mean that truly. Like, I was never someone that was like, I can see myself in this dress and this place. It just was never something I thought about. Um, I guess we kind of went through getting married in New Zealand, and we looked at a couple of venues around Kaikoura. We wanted something that would mean, again, something to us, not just a venue for the sake of a venue. So we looked at one in Kaikoura. We looked at hiring some marquees and putting them on mum and dad's property. And the more we played with it, it was definitely like a cost factor for us at the time. We were just renovating a giant building here in Christchurch, taking on a huge commercial sort of situation. We're in the crux of building our home that we were moving into in the August. It was just, there was a lot playing into it. So to us, I just started saying to Dan, we just need to find an option that fits in our budget that we love, and that's it. So somehow we kind of started with a guest list, and that's how we figured out a venue, because our guest list was like 300 people cut down as much as I can. I'm one of those people with lots of friends. I love people. Dan is one of those people with 2 friends. Like people with completely different size circles. But now making that guest list was really hard, and cutting it back. We've both got huge families. We've both got like grandparents in their 90s that are still alive, and that was a big factor in it. We were like, well, if we have it in Kaikoura, his grandmother can't travel, and if we have it up north, my grandmother can't travel. So let's have it somewhere else. So then we played with the idea of Fiji and Rarotonga. Bali came into the idea or the picture purely on the fact that about 120 guests on the invite list were based in Australia. My mum's Australian, huge amount of Australian that were going to be traveling. and it was actually cheaper for them to go to Bali than it was to come to New Zealand. The factor of Dan's mum not being able to be with us, we kind of jumped at the idea of having a destination wedding and making it more about the holiday and being all together rather than like in New Zealand. And then it literally all fell into place. I know this sounds ridiculous, but I messaged a lady on Instagram that I found called Mango Events is her name, which is really random. Messaged this girl. Becky replied immediately. She lives half the year in the UK and half the year in Bali. And I was like, hey, we're having a wedding. We think having it overseas, we're going to have about 70 guests. This is the venue we really like. And she's like, cool, book the venue. I'm here. We'll make it work. So we booked this beautiful venue on the beach in Canggu, which could hold 80 people comfortably seated outside, like our dream venue. On the water, breeze, because I don't deal well with the heat, and just like a stunning house. Then we sent out our guest list, the invites. And within 4 hours, we had 106 people saying, yep, we're coming. And we're like, surely not. Like, surely they just
needed a holiday at that point.
And I think we didn't realize how much the last few years have caught up on everyone. No one's been able to go to weddings, no one's been able to travel overseas. So, literally, everyone jumped at this. We had 119 people at our destination wedding. So, we had to change our venue because the first venue couldn't hold the amount of people. And Becky, the event planner, was amazing. And she was like, the only place in Canggu that will hold that is this place called the Villa Sanctuary. See if they're free, and then we'll go from there and figure out a date. So we kind of messaged this venue. They were like, yep, you can have it. It's a week sort of thing. You book it for the whole week, and it sleeps 40 people, which was even better because the venue before only slept 10. Now both of our immediate families could be all on site. It had like 10 villas on this property. It had a huge infinity pool. It just happened to work out perfect. And every time something worked out better than it should, we were like, someone's got their little hand in this, playing around with it. It was just really special. And we had literally 119 people turn up to the day, and two of those girls came with 10-week-old babies. Like,
wow.
I could not believe it. The amount of effort people made to be there was unreal. So we basically were like, if you want to come, come, because the cost is them getting there. The actual price of having a wedding in Bali was so cheap compared to anything we priced up here. Yeah, that's just how the venue and the destination idea came about, and it just fell together.
Amazing. That's so cool to hear. And yeah, I'm not sure people know that about the price, and you love that everyone was just like committed, jumped in. It's such a nice place to go on holiday as well. And what were your sort of most important elements for the day, your top priorities?
I think for me, it was, as you would know, photography was so important. Um, and makeup. I'm not a makeup girl. I put my foundation on with my fingers, and so those two things are really important. And for both of my other siblings' weddings, we've had the same photographer and the same makeup artist, and we love them to death. So Suze Blanchford is the photographer and Stacey Banfield makeup artist. And when we had originally planned on having a New Zealand wedding, it was going to be New Year's Eve, and they both block out their time for then. And I had messaged them being like, hey, we're thinking of getting married in Kaikoura on New Year's Eve. I know you're blocked out, but I'm just putting out some feelers. They're like, of course, we'll come and do it. And I was like, amazing. Then when it kind of transpired into being in Bali, I messaged them both and I said, hey, I'm so sorry. I know I've mucked you around, but we've decided to get married overseas. So take us off your list. And they both replied back saying, when and where? And I was like, well, we're going to get married in Bali in November. And they were like, when in November? I was like, well, between like this sort of the start to the middle, roughly, is kind of like when we're thinking. And they both said, if you do it between the 5th and the 12th, we're both free, would love to come. And I was like, surely not. Like, surely they don't want to travel for that. But they did. So we booked our wedding to be on a Wednesday, the 8th. And Suze and Stacey both flew over together. They got a house together. They came to the like the welcome dinner, they were at the wedding, they were there the whole time. Like it was so nice. And I think if you don't ask, you don't know. And I would never have thought of asking them to come with, especially if you can get the cost down in other places. It's so worth paying for that, I think. Like we, like your travel to get over there was not that much than more than paying a photographer to fly down from up north down to the South Island, or by the time they do accommodation, travel, car, it wasn't actually that much difference. And they just made me feel so comfortable. And like a photographer has a huge impact on how you feel on the day. And that was like my one thing was those two girls had to be there. Those girls are just like the dynamic duo. They're unreal and amazing.
So good, amazing. That all just like fell into place, meant to be, and definitely, yeah, it makes you feel good when it's someone you know and like they do spend a lot of time with you on the day. So yeah, you want to just have that good vibe. Can you tell me a bit about your wedding outfits, your dress? How was that process, finding it, getting it made? Yeah.
Yeah, I actually really struggled in New Zealand finding a dress. I'm quite tall. I'm like 178 centimeters tall. I'm quite busty, broad shouldered, perfect, like square. So when I decided we had to get a wedding dress, I was already too late. Like we got engaged in the March and then ended up bringing the wedding forward to the November because we had family members that were wanting to try and have children, etc., on schedule. So we were like, all right, we'll bring it forward to the November. It gives us like 6 months to plan this wedding. And I'm pretty sure I went and tried on dresses in the April, might have been late April. And I went somewhere in Christchurch and I actually had the worst experience. They didn't have many sizes there, and the stuff they had that I could fit, I had one dress I could try on, which was not my style at all. I don't wear anything fitted. I never have my arms out. So I felt really, I don't know. I feel like I just didn't feel like I could try anything on and get that like, ooh, pretty bride feel, which I think is really important too. I don't think everyone gets that this is the dress. I've found my dress feeling. I don't know if that's for everyone. I think some people definitely get that. I don't think I did, but I loved my dress. Don't get me wrong. Like it was the best thing ever. But there was never this moment of like, this is the one. I've been waiting to find this. So I tried on the one dress in Christchurch, walked out, got in my car, cried hysterically, not a crier. Got home and I was like, okay, I've seen this one dress on Instagram through a designer in Sydney that I love. I'm going to message her. Message this designer, explain my situation. She's like, let's have a Zoom on the Monday. I was like, cool. Got on Zoom with her. We talked about her dresses. And there was one that was basically quite chilly, which I ended up wearing, very see-through, no lining, with really cool sort of like full shoulders and frill details. And I was like, I think that's the dress I want. She's like, okay, are you sure? Because you're not trying this on and it's expensive. And I was like, yep, let's do it. The dress was $8,500. And I was like, I'm just going to jump at it. It's the one thing that I need to feel comfortable in, and I'll just flick it off afterwards straight away. And she was like, okay. So I paid the deposit for a dress I'd never tried on, never seen in the flesh, and I picked up 2 weeks before my wedding. She was amazing. She was so kind. She explained heaps about the dresses. She got people to put them on and show me it in movement and everything. And I think if I didn't have her, if I didn't get that designer, Christy, she changed my whole view on it. I think I would have really struggled in finding a dress. Um, so she made the dress and I picked it up. But in the beginning, she thought I was talking about November 2024. And then when she realized I meant in 3 months' time, she was like, okay, we need to hustle. So she was amazing and turned it around in like 10 to 12 weeks. She did all the things because it was a dress I had to wear with no bra. So it was completely see through. So underneath, she had like stitched on beautiful, like 3D flowers all over the area that you'd be able to see things. And she was just great. And I just felt so comfortable in that dress. And especially on the day, it was the hottest day ever. It was a really light, breezy, comfortable dress to wear.
So good. It's definitely a bit of an emotional experience, that whole thing. And yeah, it makes me sad to hear when people have like not the best time, but I'm glad that that worked out. And it sounds like she was just the perfect designer and brand for you in the end. And so lucky that it just like was perfect on the day. And did you have a bridal party? If so, how was that process choosing them?
Yeah, I did have a bridal party. I found that really hard. Like I said,
Mm.
I love all of my girls. I love everyone. And I was like, oh, this is really hard. And I ended up having my sister and then four friends. So there was five of them. And I kind of just let them have free reign with anything. We all stayed in a house together the night before the wedding, which is where we had all of our photos, our first look and getting ready in this beautiful white villa in Canggu. We all stayed there together, and then all of the girls that were in Bali came and hung out that night, and we just like all hung out in this little area of the pool, and we got food and drinks and hung out, which was really lovely. And then yeah, the girls kind of had free reign. I basically based the entire color coordination around the fact that I was like, I think I want blue orchids. I, I love orchids. They're my grandma's favorite flower. And in Indonesia, you've got the freedom of flowers you cannot get in New Zealand. I kind of dabble in doing flowers for weddings a little bit myself. And then one of my bridesmaids and my work colleague here in the store, Charlotte, she's a florist as well. And she was like, you've just got free reign over there that we cannot get here in New Zealand. So the toffee roses, the blue orchids, that was what I based it around. And I was like, find a dress that matches in. And they just wore what they want, which was awesome.
Oh, so good. Sounds like such a fun time just having, yeah, everyone there together, like on holiday, hanging out. So good. And you already sort of touched on the guest list, but yeah, how was that narrowing down from that big number initially? Obviously, quite difficult.
What we did was we had those, I think it was like 298 people. We invited 200 people to Bali. And then as the numbers came back as a no RSVP, we then invited the last 100. So we actually ended up inviting everyone we wanted to. And it kind of goes back again to that cost we were talking about. For us, the cost of the meal was like $23 a head or something, whereas the food over here, we were getting numbers of 170 a head. That's, the amount of people you can have for 23. We're like, if they want to fly over, please come and have fun with us. And it's not going to cost us that much more. It'll be the difference of a couple of $100 if another two families came. So that was a massive point for our guest list. And we're so glad that we got to invite everyone. Not everyone gets that freedom. Like both of my siblings got married during COVID. My sister had 30 people at her wedding. My brother had 10 of us. So I also felt like I was playing catch up for all of my family that couldn't come to the other two weddings to come along to ours. So
Yeah, nice to bring everyone together and yeah, just celebrate all together. It's so hard, those COVID ones, and the restrictions were so intense for a while there. So I feel for
crazy.
those couples for sure. And can you tell us a bit about the big day, maybe even the whole week and all the celebrations, things that you did over in Bali? How did it all go down? Any highlights, favorite moments?
The whole thing was a highlight. It was like I think for me, in the back of my mind, I've always loved the idea of a destination wedding. One of my cousins got married in Fiji when I was I must have been in my early 20s. And I remember that being like one of the funnest weddings I'd been to. It's so relaxing, it's warm, it's just easy, and there's no stress, there's no one running around trying to organize anything, like it's all done for you. And I think that's such a nice way to enjoy the day. Both of my siblings had one had on the farm, and my brother got married down at Lake Hawea. The one on the farm was a lot of work for everyone, like mowing the lawns the day before and setting this up, and my sister made her own cakes. And I just loved the idea of having it over there, just took away that pressure off everyone to just actually enjoy the holiday and the time with everyone. How did it start? We kind of got ready in Marja, which is these beautiful white cement cement buildings, which we thought was stunning until we had to go outside in the blaring sun and we're like trying to get our photos and we're like, and Suze was trying to get us to open our eyes all on the count of three. Honestly, I'll send you some photos and you can see how squinty we were. It was absolutely horrific, but beautiful building. And then Suze was amazing. And she was like, hey, we stayed at this epic Airbnb earlier in the week and we think you should get photos there. And I was like, okay. So we drove to this person's Airbnb and went inside what was this pink villa. And it's like pink concrete, unreal little villa that had just opened. And Susan, Stacey, and their partners were kind of one of the first ones to stay in it and had talked to them about having photos there that week with a bride and groom. So we went and had some photos taken. And I kid you not, I match the pink walls. It was the hottest day that the whole time we were there. So it was 39 degrees, 97% humidity, and I was like wringing my hair out. Like there was no cute, pretty bride. Like there was not one cute, intimate photo. Like it was so hot. And the funniest thing is, I remember sending out the invites, and one of my good friends in Sydney, Micah, was like, I had to double check because I found it crazy that you're getting married in Indonesia and it's so hot there. That had never passed my mind planning the wedding about how hot it would be on the day. It was crazy hot. Like everyone was dripping. All the bridesmaids were soaking wet. My husband was in a 3-piece suit, bless his soul. Everyone's like, must love you. Like there's a photo walking and his entire back is saturated. There's videos with the sweat coming. Like that must have been the one thing of the day that I just had not prepared for was the heat. I remember walking out of the room to walk down the aisle, and my hair was lovely, wavy. Within 10 minutes of the ceremony, I could feel it like stuck to my face, stuck to my neck. I was just like, this is outrageous. But in saying that, everyone was in the same boat, everyone was soaking wet, and it was fine. Everyone just jumped in the pool fully clothed at 4 p.m. So it was absolutely fine. But the heat was absolutely one thing I will never, ever forget. And people continually talk about how hot it was. But I think the day was just always going to be really hard after losing Rosanna. And me and Dan had talked a lot about it leading up to the day about how we wanted this to be a celebration, but we also knew that his whole family was going to be hurting a lot. This being the first kind of, I guess, celebration without her being there. And we kind of tried to do things so she was involved in our day. You know, we had photos of her sitting next to us. My mum really cutely printed a photo of Dan and his mum and laminated it and popped it in his pocket the morning of the wedding so that she was with him the whole day over his heart. Just little things like that to try and remember her. And I think I was so thankful that our families have merged together in this crazy, beautiful way, in this sort of grief that kind of almost brought us together more. And the speeches from my side of the family and from Dan's side of the family were just like this huge amount of gratitude towards each other. And it was just really special seeing the love between the two families. And I think that is the most important part. Like you're joining a family together. Not everyone gets this like seamless union. Like I just feel like we've been so lucky in that the love is super back and forth and exactly the same. And yeah, that was a really special part of the day.
Oh, so many special memories, and yeah, definitely some like bittersweet moments because obviously wish that she was there. But yeah, so nice that your families are so close. A lot of beautiful stories from the day and intense heat. That's a lot. crazy. But yeah, as you said, everyone's in it. So just end up embracing it in the end, I guess. And honestly, looking at your photos, what I've seen from Instagram, they look beautiful. And I couldn't tell there were any big sweat patches or anything. So it turned out well. What did you find the hardest about the whole wedding planning process? You've obviously touched on some really tough things, but yeah, is there anything that you look back on and regret or would do a bit differently?
I think there's nothing that I regret actually. We had the best time. We wouldn't change it for anything unless we could just down the heat a little bit. But I think we were so lucky in the fact that we fell into Becky's hands. This girl's like a machine. Like I think we had one face-to-face Zoom meeting and maybe like a chain of messages on WhatsApp. And I remember saying to Dan when we were flying into Bali, I was like, what if what if it's not even like real and we turn up and nothing's ready? And like we don't even
Another
really know this.
catfish.
Yeah, it's happened before. Like, what if this is happening again? But we turned up and she turned up the next morning and was just like, this is done, this is done, this is done. Is there anything else you want? It's going to be hot. Do you want an ice cream truck? I was like, this woman is amazing. And I think we kind of wanted a destination wedding purely to take it out of our hands. We didn't want to have to make the decisions. We're both very busy people. Having an event planner was the best decision we ever made. Like, she organized everything. I sent her 3 photos of flowers I wanted, and I kid you not, they were like copy and paste from the Pinterest board to our table decorations. And I had no idea what we were going to be walking into because we never met one vendor. Like, she organized flowers, she organized the bar and the waiters, she organized the food, she organized the cake, she organized a champagne tower, she organized a videographer we didn't know we were getting, which is the most hilarious video you've ever seen. Everything else was super chic. This video is like, I can't post it. It's so funny. It's like jagged crossover fading of photos. And anyway, we had so much extra stuff we had no idea was included. And I think it just goes back to she was so reasonably priced for what it was. Like, I'm pretty sure we got our whole day for like $37,000. And I know people aren't heaps willing to talk about the cost of weddings, but you can't get that very often for 120 people, full buffet meal. We had unlimited alcohol. We had everything. That's not including the photographer, which came from New Zealand, but everything there on that day. It was just so reasonable. And I feel like there's a little bit of a fear about destination weddings, especially if they're going to be for a few more than 25 people. But I just don't want people to be afraid of it. I think I was nervous for about 2 minutes until I met Becky. And then I was like, actually, this is going to be so great. She's got this under control. We literally just have to turn up and have fun. Like, she took every single piece of pressure off us. We would have had no idea if something wasn't okay because I honestly don't recall it ever not being. And she then, when we got there, was like, hey, the next day, do you guys want to have a thing back here at the venue again? We can do like a lunch and everyone can just hang out by the pool. We were like, it's a great idea. You know, like things that you were like apprehensive of, or but everyone's traveled so far to be there. I think, why not soak up as much of that time as you can with everyone? I just think they're so much fun and they're an easy way for you all to have a really fun, relaxing holiday. But I guess you do spend more on everyone having to pay for their flights. Whereas that's kind of where Bali won for us because the flights were way cheaper than Fiji or Raro.
I think that is like a bit of an unknown sometimes, or people think because they can't be on the ground for the whole thing, it's like giving up a bit of this control. And then, yeah, obviously find like good recommended vendors like that planner and people that can just have it all under control. But yeah, it can actually be such a cheaper option. And just even those prices you touched on there, like it's a lot more in New Zealand for all of those things. So yeah, so interesting to hear. So you did touch on the like budget side of things as well. How did you find that whole process? Did you have like a set budget from the get-go? Did you go under, over? How was that for you?
We kind of decided that we refused to go over $70,000. 70,000 was our point of like, nah, this is silly. For us, everyone is different. And I know everyone's different and everyone has different budgets. But that was to include all of our flights there, our honeymoon afterwards. Like it was like the whole sort of situation, dresses, rings, the whole shebang. And I think making a budget is really important. My husband's a spreadsheet guy. I'm like we'll sort it out later. Those two people seem to always marry each other. I don't know why. But um, so Dan had a spreadsheet from very early on, showing us where the money was going. It would change as the people changed, and it was great. And I think for us, you have to have a budget, or it's never ending. Like there's an option when you choose anything of like A, B, and C, and the prices are so different. Does anyone know what they are on the day? They're just there celebrating you and having a fun day. They're not going to notice if you spent $15 a bottle of wine to $108 a bottle of wine. It's not as important as you think to spend money on the little things. I think spend the money on the things that are important to you. Spend money on the things that will make you and your guests remember the day. I also think it doesn't have to be an expensive day. I think New Zealand is really hard. Our costs are so high regardless. Like the bar service for us in Bali was unlimited cocktails and beer and non-alcoholic. We didn't have wine because wine has a huge tax in Indonesia. So we just had cocktails, beer, and non-alcoholic, and that was $64 New Zealand a head, which was the most expensive thing in our whole list per person. That still is crazy cheap to what you would get here, I feel like. And we really used that bar. The staff had to go back into town 3 times to replenish the bar. We had a lot of people that were good drinkers, clearly. Um, and the fact that you could just like have your cocktail, jump in the pool, back on the dance floor, back to the bar, like it just made it this like really fun time. But it sort of gave a space as well for people who just wanted to sit on the side and just watch on. I think just yeah, the money is so hard, and I think it's such a tricky thing to talk about because some people have saved their whole life for this day, and other people are like, what can we how can we make this happen, what can we do within our budget? And I've never seen a wedding that I've been like, every wedding is beautiful, because at the end of the day it's not about the flowers or the anything. It's about the couple and the love that they're bringing to commit to each other in front of their guests. It's literally what it comes down to. Like, it's not about anything else, it's about the love. And you can't buy that. That's just a genuine feeling that is there. And I think you bring that with you to your wedding. And the whole wedding is a vibe of how you and the groom or whoever is getting married, how you guys go into that wedding sets the whole tone. Like it changes the whole thing, which is where we were really trying together to be celebrating, because we knew we had that like level of grief that was lying underneath. And we just knew that if we went in with this, like, not sad, but like you could see it, everyone else would feel it too. And so we worked really hard on that. And we all landed on the Sunday night, and on the Monday night, we had a welcome dinner at the lawn where we just all went and had a drink, and we're meant to be there for an hour or two. And we just sat there, all of us having drinks, watching the sunset, getting to know each other, because there was heaps of people that hadn't met each other before. The wedding was on the Wednesday in the middle of the week, meaning that people could fly in and just take a week off, or they could come in and just take a couple of days off. And then we had the day after function, And then actually about 50 of the guests stayed on for the whole 2 weeks with us. So we actually all moved around Bali together. So we started in Canggu, we had a week there, we went up to Ubud all together, we went down to Uluwatu all together. So it just felt like this never ending holiday all together. It was so much fun.
I love that. So that was kind of your honeymoon, just carrying on, staying for a while there.
Yeah, we were gonna just stay in Bali and have our honeymoon. And then we knew we were so close to Sri Lanka, being in Indonesia. And I had been to Sri Lanka before moving home to New Zealand, and Dan had never been. And obviously, his mother grew up there. And so we played with the idea of going to Sri Lanka for a honeymoon. And I said to Dan, I think we should see if your dad wants to come with us. And he was like, are you sure it's our honeymoon? And I was like, it doesn't need to be about us. Like, this is such a special thing to be able to go and share that with your dad. So we left everyone in Bali. They were all heading back to New Zealand and Australia. And me and Dan and his dad, Jeff, we all flew from Indonesia to Sri Lanka together. And we flew in on Rosanna's birthday, which was also just happened to be the date that we flew in. It was just like all these things, those coincidences were happening. It was just magical. Anyway, flew in on her birthday, landed, and we had 2 weeks in Sri Lanka with his dad, traveling around everywhere where she grew up. We went to their family plot of land that they still currently have there today. And I actually, a lot of the time, was me sitting to the side, like on a hammock with a cocktail, just watching the two of them. At the time, I was like, it's a honeymoon. But now that I look back, and hindsight's a great thing, you could never get that time again. And I just am so thankful that Jeff came with us. And I think it was super healing for both of them to be there together and experience the whole country together. And I'm so glad he was with us. Like, it just made it really, really special. So that kind of was our mini honeymoon. And then we're actually heading off towards the end of this year and having our honeymoon, hopefully, in Europe is our plan. But yeah, Sri Lanka was a really cool add on, really special, kind of like, I wish we could have taken the whole family with us, you know? But I think we're just so thankful that Jeff was like, yeah, I'll come, because he could have so easily been like, no, you guys go. But he jumped at it and it was amazing.
Oh, so special. So nice to have that time together and hold on to those memories for a long time, I'm sure. Was there any helpful websites, apps, different resources that you used during the planning process with like finding vendors, inspo, all of that?
To be honest, I didn't really look. I knew that we wanted, once we decided on Bali, and that only just happened out of purely looking up flight costs. It came down to flight costs, and we're like, cool, they're really cheap at the moment. Let's just send it out and see if anyone is big on the idea. I think once we decided on Bali, and I just literally Googled wedding in Bali, and it came up with like 5 event planners or something. I messaged the first one, which was Long Table Events, which is quite a big Balinese wedding planning site, which I think they're based in Perth half the year, Bali half the year. And the next one down was Mango Events, and I was like, I'll try her. So I messaged Becky, and she replied, and I was like, we're thinking of getting married. This is the date. And she was like, yep, easy, done. And then from then on, it was, this is the catalogue for furniture. This is these are your 2 options for catering. These are your 2 options for the bar. There was never like stacks of options. It was A or B, A or B, which is great because you don't need a million options. You just need one that works, right? Like, I think you can get so caught up on the sitting down with the menu and being like, do we want arancini or do we want a a bao bun? No one cares at the end of the day. Like, getting a delicious meal at a wedding, like, no one's going to remember that there was another option. So I think don't get yourself caught up on the little things, and don't stress about the little things, because nothing's ever going to go to plan, and things will happen on the day, and you will be wringing your hair out with sweat potentially. So you just have to roll with it.
Such great advice. Love that. And yeah, you've given a lot already, but is there any other advice that you would give to couples planning their wedding right now?
I think it goes back to what I was just saying, in that it's about nothing else except the two people that are getting married, which is why it doesn't matter if there's 100 guests, 4 guests, 500 guests. It's about the two of you joining, becoming technically one married unit, and it's about you guys committing to each other for life. And I think divorce is such a huge thing that gets talked about now with, oh, you're getting married, it's like, yeah, you're making a commitment to each other. And yeah, there's these huge statistics about divorce, but I think me and Dan talked about this heaps before we got married, and that divorce is not an option, unless for some people it has to be, and I understand that. But you have to work on your relationship every day, whether you're married or not married. And I think there's something beautiful about a marriage. I've been brought up Christian, and I totally think there's this beautiful thing about marriage. And I think, it's this wrapping around of like, you've got your person. There's someone there no matter what that you've got. And you're sharing your lives together, and you have hopefully one day have children and they have the same name. And there's this huge, I just think it's really special. And not everyone gets it. And if you get the option of that and you find that person, then I just think go for it. Like, a wedding can be in your backyard, a wedding can be overseas. It doesn't matter where it is, as long as you're getting married for the right reasons, and as long as it's with the right person. And I think you might not get your this is the dress moment, but you definitely get the this is my person moment. And that's your person. That's the only thing that I think is important.
I love that. That's, yeah, amazing. And what is married life like now? Do you feel like you got any of those post-wedding blues?
Do you know what? We have been so busy. This sounds silly. We've been so busy that we got back from our Sri Lanka trip on like the 3rd or 4th of December, straight into the Christmas rush. So obviously I've got a homewares gift sort of furniture store here in Christchurch and Kaikoura, and Dan's got an architecture firm. So both of us were crazy busy leading up to the end of the year. Then we had Christmas. Like, we never got the chance to have the post-wedding blues. And I think because we were really lucky in that wedding carried on for 2 weeks in Bali with so many of those people, we never had the moment of like, oh, everyone's leaving. Like, we were the ones leaving everyone in Bali to go to Sri Lanka. And I think that was a massive thing. Like, we never had the day after, like, oh, it's over. Like, it carried on. And I think a lot of destination weddings have that feeling because everyone has a couple of days together. It's not just the weekend and over. I think that's a huge part of an overseas wedding. Mm.
Yeah, I love that. Just to get to extend it out a little bit and yeah, make it last longer. So
Yeah.
good. Amazing. It's been so lovely to chat to you. And yeah, I think it's so cool for people to hear a bit more about destination weddings. And yeah, even though we're the Kiwi Wedding podcast, still counts. You guys are Kiwis getting married overseas. So
And I think that's the thing, right? Like, you can take all of your Kiwi vendors and go somewhere. Like, it doesn't mean you have to use everything overseas. You can totally take your people with you.
we
Like,
love
we
to
took 2 of our
travel,
biggest
us
vendors.
vendors.
Yeah, take the photographer.
Yeah, definitely ask because most people are keen and they want to help you. And yeah, you can still get the amazing images or makeup or whatever that you've dreamed of or worked with those people before. So, love that. Is there anything else you want to add or that we missed as we wrap up?
Actually, there's one funny thing that happened on the day that I have to mention. We were also, the reception was set out like on a lawn with sort of fairy lights hanging around. There was coconut trees everywhere, and we had just sat down to have dinner. No one had got up yet, and it was dead quiet. Someone had just got sat down after speaking. I can't remember who it was. And a coconut, I kid you not, a coconut fell off a tree and went bang in the middle of the table and was like so close to taking someone out, ruined everything, like it dented the table.
Oh my God.
Like, honestly, I'm pretty sure it's in the video. And we were like, that would have literally taken someone out. Imagine that. That would have been a really bad ending, but can happen.
Oh, crazy. Well, I'm glad that's just ended up as a funny story to tell, not something super awful. But yeah, that's the island life weddings, I guess. Oh,
Literally.
so good. Amazing. Thank you so much for coming on.
No, thank you so much for having me. And I think you're doing an amazing thing with this. And I think the more people that can talk about weddings and different types of weddings is so important, because it can be super overwhelming. And I totally understand that. So I think it's great to hear different options. Hey.